Hey everybody, it's that time of year where I like to go through and triage and clean out through all of my emergency equipment and supplies. This is a working pantry that we did several years ago. I keep this in my kitchen as a go-to source for things that we need while we're cooking, preparing meals. And then I try to keep some inventory in another location that I can restock this as needed. Every year I like to go through this thing though and see what I have that needs to be cleaned out, maybe things that are getting just to that point where they need to go. I know that canned goods last a long time, and inevitably when you talk about this, somebody will say they'll be good for 50 years and all that kind of stuff. I have several different ways that I approach food storage. Like I said, this is just a working pantry in our kitchen, so I've started here. And you can see by just a quick glance how many open holes and gaps that I have in here now. What I often do every year at this time is I'll take loads of food down to my local homeless shelter where people that are more needy than I am can use it. And then that opens up space for us to put more inventory back in here that will give us a time span that I'm looking for. We've got other dry goods and things down in this lower area. What I like to do there is vacuum seal bags of beans and things like that we like to cook often also, and keep them in here. I've done a lot of different types of methods revolving around emergency food storage over the years. I really like these mason jars using the vacuum sealer. The little adapter to use on your food saver on these mason jars, to me, is an invaluable $20 or $25 investment. What this allows me to do is put food in these jars, seal them up, and then when I want to access them, I just pop the lid off. We cook and use this food, and then I can seal it back up and throw it back on the shelf. It's very easy to do. It doesn't take any time at all. So this year, as part of my triage and organization in our pantry, I'm adding more jars and more space to do this kind of a thing. This allows us to use our food supplies and rotate through them rather than just rat-holing things for 20 years or whatever. This method for me works the best. It allows me to manage our emergency food storage. It's foods that we do eat on a regular basis in our home, so we're rotating through it, and I can easily look at these things and see what needs to be restocked or resupplied. A couple of things to think about is if you live in an area with a lot of earthquakes, you might want to put some strapping on your shelf to keep these things from falling off and the glass breaking. We really have grown to like this method, and it's kind of the preferred method for us, along with our canned food storage. Now here's something that I've decided to do in my New Year's triage of my supplies that worked out really good. Remember these just-in-case buckets that we all, bought probably 10 years ago or something now? I know I've had these for a long time. And they have individual pouches full of Mountain House food, and I took these 2 buckets full of these pouches of food, and I was able to put them all in one bucket and add some that I had bought just single pouch purchases throughout the years. We discovered that we had a gluten intolerant person, has a gluten allergy, after I began doing this stuff. So as I was triaging through these buckets, I discovered that I had quite a few old pouches of food in here that were not gluten free. A lot of times people think freeze-dried food is automatically good for 30 years, etc. And we've talked about this before in our videos here. The reality of it is that not all of these foods have a shelf life that long. Stuff like this that has dairy in it, butter powders and some milk products, eggs, things like that. Some of those products, even in a freeze-dried container, freeze-dried and packaged in the appropriate container, may only have a 5 to 7 year shelf life. This thing here actually has it's a best by date of a year ago. Check, see if it's any good, or get rid of it minimum. It doesn't need to take space up in our emergency food storage where I need viable supplies if we ever get into a situation where we're living off this stuff. Digging through my supplies, I found 3 cans that are over 10 years old. They're, again, products that don't have a real extended shelf life on them. So these are all things that are taking up space in my emergency food storage that probably aren't viable food sources for me and my family. So these things are going to go. Incidentally, I think it would be interesting to do a video opening these old cans of food up and some of these old food envelopes and just see what we find. If you're interested in that, leave me a comment down below. Just tell me you would like to see that. These are 2 buckets of emergency food, as you can see, that I bought probably about 13 years ago. This is one of those purchases I made back before I really knew what I was doing, and it just seemed like a good idea to buy 2 10 pounds and 22 pounds of food from an emergency food storage company that would be good for 30 years. And I just assumed that it would be. It would be easy to assume that the product inside is in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, etc. Several people came out over the years putting out videos saying they opened these things up and discovered that it was just food dumped in a bucket with the lid hammered on. So these are 2 things that I'm concerned about. I'm not going to let these take up space in my emergency food storage any longer. I've got oats and cornmeal. I know cornmeal is not going to have a real long shelf life. This is the kind of thing that could get you in deep trouble should an emergency happen and you think you've got all this emergency food stored up only to find out that it's no good. These are more products that we're going to open up and find out what really do we have. Again, if you'd like to see a video on that, leave a comment down below and you can follow along as I open these things up and see what we find. It's been a long time since I've dug into this first aid kit that I built many years ago. I often find that I reach into these top compartments here and access things that I need on a routine basis, but when you get down into the bottom of it, it's pretty tightly packed. You can't easily look in there and see what you have, and it's been quite a while since I've dug through it. This is what I've learned going through a drawer also that I have full of over-the-counter medications. Tylenol that goes back to 2009. Jar of Advil, 2019, and on. All of these things, 2019, this one's 2017. It's important to think about things like this to have around. However, if you do, like we're talking about today, and you just throw these in a drawer somewhere and never look at them again, this says 2021, and this one here is 2018. Maybe these things aren't bad, but again, for my money, for the space that these things are taking up, I would rather replace them at this point with fresh products. Would you want to have a jar of something that says it expired, 4 to 5 years ago around and rely on that in emergency, or would you rather have some fresh stuff in there knowing that it's going to be full strength and do what you need it to do? How long has it been since you've gone and checked the batteries in emergency items like this, where you're going to grab this thing and run or throw it in the car or whatever? The flashlight still does turn on, but I'm going to change these today and put a fresh set in there as part of my annual triage that I do. More than likely, I put these batteries in there last year at the same time, because this is an annual thing that I do, and it's what today's video is all about, and you can see why it's important. Also, don't forget to look at your packs, go bags, bug out bags, whatever you want to call them. When I dug through this one here, I found some water purification tablets that are several years past their expiration date. Again, I think that these would probably still work. I'm not a medical expert or a chemical expert, but more than likely their potency has been reduced, and it's just not something I want to screw with. I'm going to get a new package of these and restock the bag so that my equipment is fresh and ready to go. Speaking of batteries, this is that same time of year where I go through my house and I replace the batteries in all of my smoke detectors throughout the house. It's a good habit to get into, and ensures you that things like this carbon monoxide alarm, your smoke detectors, flashlights, as we previously mentioned, are ready to go when you need them. To me, that is emergency preparedness. It's not always about, the survival equipment and all this kind of thing. Your family is relying on you to be somebody that thinks about keeping all of your emergency equipment and warning systems in good operating order. And let's look at some of our everyday carry items. Here's an old can of pepper spray that I've had for many, many years. I've got several of these that have just, very little left in them. They're not something that I'm going to trust or use in a, self-defense type situation. These things might be good for doing a little bit of training or something like that, but they definitely should be removed from your first tier, equipment like we're talking about today. If you've got an old can of pepper spray that your grandfather had in the war or something, maybe it's time to get rid of that and get some fresh equipment. When was the last time you looked over your canning equipment and supplies? Are your seals good on your canner? Are the lids that you have still viable? All these things are things that I think are important to take a look at too while we're doing our triage, and make sure that we have usable equipment to process and preserve food when we're going to need it. I like to keep things like this around: drywall screws, wood screws, nails in different lengths. Do you have oil and lubricants and things for your machinery that you need to run? And here's something that I found triaging through my equipment just today. I like to keep some backups of different types of sealers and caulking. Since I did this last year, some of these sealants and things have turned hard and they're no good. They're just hard as rubber in the tube. So this is another arena that I need to focus on and get organized again so that these things are available to me when I need them. How about saw blades and different types of cutting wheels and things that you might need to weld and repair things? You couldn't just run to the store and get all the things you need, and you were trying to keep your old car or motorcycle or something running. All of a sudden, these wouldn't be hobby tools anymore. They would be life-sustaining equipment. But how many of you have battery supplies that you have absolutely no idea the condition of your inventory? In this case, we went through some of our batteries and we discovered that we had a lot of them that were corroded and leaking. This gives us the ability to do a quick glance and see what we need. You can see how much more room we have for AA's and things like that. And it's proven to be an invaluable little tool for us in our battery storage management. Everybody, thanks for watching today's video. I think that things like this that become habit to us are very smart practice, best practice for us in our emergency response plan. It's one thing to just rat hole as much stuff as you can, have no idea what you have, how much of it's good, how much of it's usable, and just, keep hoarding and hoarding and hoarding. But I really believe that a lot of people caught up in that cycle are going to be the people that are caught with their pants down if we have a major cluster. Take a little bit of time, triage through your stuff, make it an annual thing, clean out, replace, and you'll be a lot better off when it comes time to need or use some of this stuff. Hit that like and subscribe button down below. Help me by doing that and help our channel grow. Remember, as always, get ready so that you and your family can succeed and thrive.